Namaste, everyone. Welcome to the Vedanta Life Academy series, Life Inspires Life, where we're here to learn about stories and reminiscences of great souls. And we interview swamis and nuns and spiritually elevated souls and get their reminiscences about these great souls. What makes a great soul? What were the lessons they learned from these great souls? And how do they implement them in their lives? So today we have an honored guest, Pravajaka Rajaprana, who's going to share her reminiscences. Before we begin, let us start with the chant. If you know this chant, please chant along. Om Masato Ma Satgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotir Gamaya Mrityor Ma Amritam Gamaya Avir Avir Maeti Rudrayate Dakshinam Mukham Tenamam Ahinityam Tenamam Ahinityam Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Lead us from the unreal to the real. Lead us from darkness to light. Lead us from death to immortality. Light us through and through, and guide us evermore with thy loving presence. Om, peace, peace, peace to all souls everywhere. So let me begin first by saying that today we were going to have two great souls, not only Pravajaka Rajaprana, but also Pravajaka Gita Prana, who is in Ridgely in New York. Unfortunately, due to software problems and connection problems, we're not able to get her today. So we apologize for not having Pravajaka Gita Prana, and we'll try to have her back at some other time. But today we do have Pravajaka Rajaprana, who's from our Santa Barbara convent, Vedanta convent there. And many of you know her already. We sent you her bio. She's just an eminent speaker, a scholar, and she's been practicing spiritual life for a long, long time. And she's had many, many great associations with many great and holy souls. So today, what we're going to do is we're going to take the first half of the hour to listen to the stories and reminiscences of the souls that she has met, souls that have inspired her, souls that are elevated spiritual souls. And then we're going to discuss with her maybe a little bit about what she's learned from these great souls. So we'd like to welcome Pravajaka Rajaprana. Thank you so much,
Thank you
for being here. And so please begin. We only have 1 hour, and we want to get as much as we can from you.
I was so fortunate that I could come into contact in the Vedanta Society when I was really young. When I was 15 years old, I didn't have enough time to really get into trouble, but I think given the opportunity, I certainly would have if I had not been blessed with coming to the Vedanta Society. I came here because it was had a big parking lot. And the first lecture I saw was Swami Pravajaka, but he was accompanied by the head of our center, Swami Prabhavananda. And this was in August of 1967. So it was kind of like the summer of love, and everything was like it was packed with people. There were so many people that I had to sit up on the step risers going into the shrine. There were so many people. There were people sitting on the stairs going up into the choir loft. It was just jam packed because the Beatles were doing Maharishi, and so it was like, ooh, Eastern religion. And I came there with no expectation because I didn't even know what a Vedanta Society was. I didn't know anything apart from the fact that we distributed pamphlets there, and the guy who had driven me because I was too young to drive said, well, we can go in there now. I said, can we go in there? And he said, oh, it's this really beautiful place. Oh, it's so beautiful. So we went in, and I couldn't understand what Swami Pavitrana was saying, but afterwards we came down and shook everybody's hands. And Swami Pavitrana was very formal, very in New York style, very stiff. And also he was a very, self-contained, austere soul. It was also really, really sweet, but I didn't catch it then. I was just going for quick appearances. And so he was very formal, and then Swami Prabhavananda was next to him. And he just it's like this was the time when they shook your hand. No one did this pranam stuff. Shook your hand. So he just very gently touched my hand, and then he smiled at me, and I couldn't stop crying. And I couldn't stop crying. And I was mortified because I was like, stop the war machine. You got to get out there and be active. It was all this time when they were bombing the bank here, which I wasn't involved in. But I mean, it was just like, you got to change society. It's like my whole life was just, whoop, that's over. I've turned the page on that forever. And seeing this man who just exuded holiness. And just the minute he smiled at me, I'd never encountered that tremendous power of love. That tremendous love that didn't come from him personally, but came from some inner source that he was just like a conduit of. And I think that's why I reacted so powerfully to it. I'd been interested in religion my whole life. I'd studied many religions. They all kind of fascinated me. But to actually encounter personal holiness was something I never anticipated. I always thought that what a person was, if they were holy, would be just, kind of uptight and straight and following the rules. But he was just obviously so relaxed, so at home in who he was, and just pouring out this love and holiness. And I could barely move. And all I could think of was, how can I come back? How can I get back here? How do I see him again? Because whatever he has is what I've been looking for, and I didn't even know it. Even at the age of 15, I was like, all of a sudden I knew there was something in my life that was missing, and I thought I simply had to change the world. And then once I could do that, it's like, fine, now I can do something else. But once I met him, it was like, oh, this is what it's all about. This is what it's all about. So I just came back, and I discovered my parents' library. They had Vedanta for the Western world in their library. It's like, what? How did you have this book? I never even noticed it. They hadn't read it. They just happened to have a copy of it. So I read the whole thing, and it's like everything I learned about Vedanta was yes, 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 yes. That we believe that no one is, we commit mistakes, but there's no like sin. We commit errors, but there's nothing like not some sort of stain on the soul, that every being has inherent perfection. And Swami Prabhavananda again and again used to say that he said, it's in the palm of your hand. God realization, it's in the palm of your hand. And again, he used to talk about grace, that it's all in grace, that it's like the Lord's grace is there waiting for us. We just have to put forth a little bit of effort. And he put great emphasis on devotion, on meditation. He would say, wagging his index finger, uh, practice, practice, practice. Meditate, meditate, meditate. Remember, I was sitting in the living room when he had just arrived from Hollywood. This was probably 1967, 68, something like that, probably 1968. And he had come and he had just arrived and he was sitting down and, greeting everybody and talking. And, and he looked at me and said, "Why are you sitting here?" And I said, "Well, Swami, I just want to see you." And he said, "Go to meditate." It was probably 5 or 10 minutes after 12, and he was very much for regularity, as until he was really old and sick. Every day, morning, noon, and evening. In morning and noon, he was in that shrine meditating. Every single morning, every single noon between 12 and 1, there was the puja. He was just, and to be able to meditate with him in the morning, like we all smashed in there. It was just amazing. But he was just like really important with the meditation. And people would say, "Oh, well, don't you get lost in meditation?" It's like he would go into this really deep state and then just come right out. And you just felt like you were sort of bathed in this spring of holiness and beauty. But the really wonderful thing is that he just made it seem like it's so available. God is right there. He's available. His love is overflowing. We just have to access it. If we really want it, we can have it. It's right there for us. He also made a real point that it's like he wasn't one to condemn others. If people had failings, he was just like, "Well, okay, start again, start again." Such a such a deep mystic. I remember we were upstairs in the choir loft. It was a Durga Puja. And we were going to sing something. We were going to sing something for Durga Puja. I hadn't yet become a nun, but I was in the choir. And Swami Prabhavananda came in. He was wearing his silk dhoti. And he came in and he went flat down, face forward. And I was a kid, I was 15, 16 years old. So I thought, "Oh my God, he's tripped and fallen and he's so old." But in fact, he had made a Shashtanga Pranam because he said he had seen Mother Durga there. He had actually seen Mother Durga and he made a Shashtanga Pranam at her feet. It's like, whoa, whoa. And I remember how every little thing his whole life revolved around Swami Brahmananda, his spiritual teacher, who was the spiritual son of Sri Ramakrishna. So it's like you sweep the path because Maharaj walks here. We don't want Maharaji to have his foot pricked by anything. It was like everything was. I was once in Hollywood for Father's Day, and he was in a wonderful spiritual mood. And he was getting quite elderly at this point, and he was going up the stairs to his room, and he turned around at sort of the little balcony area, and he raised his hand and he said, "I bless you, my children." He said, "No, no, Maharaj blesses you. Maharaj blesses you." And you could just feel like this incredible peace and blessing coming out of that. It's like, whoa. And the amazing thing was one of our devotees, Howie, such a wonderful, humble guy, was kind of on the right hand side. And he took a picture of this moment that Swami was raising his hand and blessing us. And then he took it down to Kodak, which was like an actual living big presence in Hollywood at the time. I think it was on Hollywood Boulevard at the time. Big, big processing thing. So he went there and he just had the film developed, not thinking too much of it. And he went down there like 5 days later or something to get the prints. And they said, "No, there's a problem with the print. We can't give this back to you." And he said, "No, what's the problem?" He said, "Well, this funny thing is happening to this. We want to figure out what happened with our processing." And I said, "Well, let me see it." And there was this beautiful green light coming out of Swami Prabhavananda's hand, going over his hand as he was doing the blessing. And how he said, "That's not a problem with the processing. Give me that. Give me that." And a number of us still have copies of that photo, remembering what it was like to be under that blessing. It was to be able to live that closely or to see that closely or to even see once a person like that. It who actually lives in the presence of God was such a profound, life-changing experience for me. It was nothing but the grace of God. To be able to have my life change so dramatically by just one human being who actually lived in that presence. I was such a dumb twit, and I was young. You'd have more sense as you grow older, hopefully. But I was sitting. I had my first or second interview with him, and I was sitting on the couch in the living room, and I said, "Swami, have you seen God?" And he just put his head down like that, and he took a while. And when he raised his head, I saw that little moisture was coming down from the sides of his eyes like that, and he said, "Yes, I have, and you can too." It's like, okay, well, that's what I'm going to do. I didn't say that, but it's like, okay, that's what I want. That's what I want in my life. I don't want all the other dreck. It comes too easy. This one, this is the goal worth having. His death was amazing. It's like when on June 1st, he went to this sort of Baba Samadhi in the hospital, and he was kind of doing various things to various people that he was speaking to. He called them monastics. I wasn't a monastic then, but I heard about it from all my sisters. That with one nun, she walked in and he kind of blasted out her mantra in front of everybody. And then with others, he said something completely different. And then he was talking about this joyful death, another mrityu. Then when he actually passed, but Maharaj had given him the blessing of choosing what day he wanted to die. So he chose July 4th. And as he was very sick, lying in bed, kept saying, "What time is it? What time is it?" He didn't want to die till actually gone over into midnight. And it was July 4th. So after it was July, then he said, "Maharaj has come." And he passed on. And everybody, I got because of Blessed Shanti Prana, she called up, and I got there about probably 20 minutes after he passed away. I was living over in Beechwood at the time, and the room was just charged with holiness, and people were weeping, but there was much more joy and celebration. The atmosphere was just electrified with this incredible feeling of the extremely tangible presence of the divine, which made Swami Swahanandaji's passing a little more bearable, because that kind of replicated that when he went through that final day. It's like that wonderful feeling like, yes, the great ship is sort of sailing out of port now, and it's a magnificent thing. We miss them terribly, but to be able to witness a life like that, what a blessing. So he's my guru. Swami Pravajaka. I can never give thanks enough to him or to Maharaj. He always asked Maharaj's permission. Swami Ramananda, if he was to initiate a person. Holy Mother Shama Krishna. It's all grace, grace, grace. And Swami Prabhavananda continually talked about grace. He and Swami Pavitrananda used to have arguments at the dining table, but was it grace or was it self-effort? Swami Pavitrananda was always arguing self-effort, and Swami Prabhavananda would argue grace. And then basically, it's like even to have self-effort is grace. It's like they're entwined. And then to go from there to Swami Asheshananda. I saw Swami Asheshananda for the first time at Swami Prabhavananda's memorial service, and we were all very impressed with him. What is wonderful when you know more than one sadhu in your life, more than one holy person, is that you realize there is no box that you can put a holy person into. It's like Swami Prabhavananda was like this, and so you think, oh, they're like that. And they're not. They are completely different. Nobody could be more different from Swami Prabhavananda than Swami Asheshananda, unless it was Swami Swahananda. That was really different. And everyone is a true, incredible, holy person in their own right. And then we realize we're the ones who want to put them in the box and say, holy people are like this. They're whoever they are. Swami Asheshananda was always alive with the presence of Holy Mother. He was always there talking about Mother, and also, importantly, Swami Sardananda. Swami Sardananda, he was the private secretary of Swami Sardananda, and he would laughingly say that both he and Swami Sardananda said that he was Swami Sardananda's bodyguard. Like, Swami Sheshananda probably weighed 80 pounds at that point, and Swami Sardananda probably weighed like 220. But he said, I'm his bodyguard. I once asked Swami Sheshananda, would you ever want to be reborn? And I thought he would say, only if I could come with Holy Mother. Instead, he said, only if I could come and serve Swami Sardananda, who, of course, was one of the great disciples of Sri Ramakrishna. And in his previous incarnation was with Jesus. I believe he was Peter. So, in fact, when he visited Rome, he went to St. Peter's, and he said, boy, it's different, but he remembered it. He had a memory of it. But Swami Asheshananda was as different as you can be, because he was like yelling, screaming, scolding. Swami Prabhavananda could scold for like crazy, but Swami Asheshananda was always late. Swami Prabhavananda was always a little early. Swami Asheshananda would give classes all the time to a very small group of people, and he didn't care that it was a small group of people. I was remembering one thing today that I'd forgotten for a long time. And he said, Sri Ramakrishna is the method. Holy Mother is the grace. And I thought, oh, how perfect. Sri Ramakrishna led this ideal life, complete renunciation, complete detachment, sort of like the king of mystics, the king of renouncers, the king of all spiritual moods. Holy Mother, he said, was the grace. It's like, okay, what I want is up here, I'm down here. How do I get there? How do I get there? It's like, Holy Mother's the grace to like bring us up to that level, to bring us there. It's like, it was kind of there in my mind. It's like, I hadn't thought of that in such a long time, but how beautiful. Thakur is the method. Is the method. Like, this is how you practice intense spiritual disciplines. This is how you do it. And Holy Mother's the grace. Swami Asheshananda was a pujari. He did puja until he was well into his 90s, and wouldn't let anyone else do it for him. He would cook for himself. He said, because Swami Sardananda had said, do not be a leaning vine, stand on your own 2 feet. So you could not even close the car door for him. He would say, okay, and he'd grab it from your hand. No one else could do it. You could not. He cooked his own food every single day. He was extremely persnickety about that, but because Swami Sardananda had given him that instruction. Then you go to Swami Shraddhananda. What a different man. As Swami Asheshananda would carry on, Swami Shraddhananda was the embodiment of humility. He was a mystic of the highest order and a non-dualist. As much as he loved Thakur, he was really a man of the Upanishads. He was a well-known scholar of the Upanishads. And just seeing him, he was a poet. He was a singer. He was a player of the tabla and a wonderful musician. He had wonderful compositions. He was the editor of Udbodhan magazine, and he wrote poetry for it. He was had the most creative imagination I've ever run into. He would say, the mantra is like a vacuum. It goes into all the dirty corners of the mind and it vacuums it up. It's like, who can think of things like that? But his mind was just like so fertile. He was a nature mystic. He would go out into the yard and he would talk to the trees, and he would say, every single afternoon he would walk and he would talk to one particular tree, and he would say, Mother, shake your hair. And inevitably, I don't know of one exception, a breeze would go through and the tree would just go, and she would shake her hair. He was so aware of the presence of this divine consciousness in absolutely everything. He was a realized soul. I once saw him in a state of bhava, and it was like, ooh, now I'm seeing it right in front of me. It was on Jagadhatri Puja morning. So I knew he'd had the highest experience with samadhi. And so I asked him, so what's it like to come back to the world after you've had samadhi? And he just looked at me and scowled. And I said, no, come on, seriously. And we were in his apartment together. It's kind of like this big room, sort of out down the corridor from where the dining room and the temple is. I said, seriously, what is it like? And he said, those are words. Those are just words. It's like, that's all I've got to use. Those are my tools. You've had the experience. I haven't. So can you please use those tools? You say, nah. He could make a scowl. That, of course, Swami Prabhavananda was a beautiful scowler too, but Swami Shraddhananda was like, those are just words. And I'd say, please, is it like, do you feel like everything is like filled with Brahman or like saturated with the divine? What is it like? And then he kind of looked at me and he was making his bed at that point. He said, all I can say is this. When I do this, and he was like, he had got the coverlet up to his pillow, and they took the coverlet and put it over his pillow at that point. He said, when I do this, I feel exactly the same as if I were offering a flower in the temple. I thought, okay. I can't even imagine what that feels like, but I like the idea. Swami Shivananda, he loved Mahapurush Maharaj so much. When he was given the mantra by Swami Shivananda, he went back after a while and asked him, Maharaj, is it okay instead of doing the mantra that you gave me, if I can just do Om? And Mahapurush Maharaj, Swami Shivananda said, all right. And then after that, he was doing Om, because this is what in the Upanishads, they talk about in the Mandukya and the Mundaka, they talk about Om. So he was a student of Om. And so he was doing that. And then he would go to Pranam to see Mahapurush Maharaj, and Mahapurush Maharaj wouldn't talk to him. And he thought, okay, well, and then it kept going back. And he would turn his head away from him. And he was so hurt because it's his guru, and he's just turning. He wouldn't talk to him, wouldn't respond to him. And so he went back later and talked to Mahapurush Maharaj's attendant, who was, oh my God, what's his name? Wonderful sadhu who was in our Benares Advaita Ashrama. Oh my God, Shankar Maharaj, and said, "What did I do? What did I do? Why is he so cold with me?" Because Mahapurush Maharaj didn't scold him; he just froze him out. And so Shankar Maharaj, Swami Apurvananda is his other name, said, he has given you the holy mantra of Thakur's name and you are not using it? He has given you the most precious gift and you're doing something else? You beg his forgiveness. So then Swami Shraddhananda was like, oh my God. So he went to him and he fell and begged his forgiveness. He said, Maharaj, please forgive me. Please forgive me. And then Mahapurush Maharaj took him to Thakur's temple at Bellarmine. Walked him down. They went together to Thakur's temple. He said, this is how you pray. Thakur, give me knowledge, give me devotion, give me faith, give me knowledge, give me renunciation, give me faith. So every day when Swami Sardananda would walk, he would go into the temple and he would stand like that. And only later did I realize, I put it together, what he was doing when he was looking at that image of Sri Ramakrishna. He was the humblest soul who had such regard for anybody else. And living in that highest state, I said, why do you hide yourself so much? He said, I'm just a little Swami. I'm not a great Swami like Swami Shraddhananda. I'm just this tiny sadhu. And I said, now, come on. You've had the highest realization. Why do you hide yourself like this? Because no one even knew about it. And he said, oh, I like my quiet life. And Swami Lokesharananda was entirely different. Another great disciple of Swami Shivananda, who again was another Advaitin. He once told me he didn't believe in the incarnation. I went, what? He said, no, I don't believe in that. It's like, but he had such love for it. Was all Thakura. I said, what do you want to do when you die? And he said, I want to look at Thakura with unblinking eyes. Just look at him with unblinking eyes. It's like, I couldn't. And I would talk about, well, I'm praying, and he said, when you pray, you were just praying to the Atman. I said, maybe you're praying to your Atman. I'm not praying to any Atman. I'm praying to Holy Mother. He said, no, you're really praying to the Atman. I said, Atman, Shmatman, you pray to whatever you want. Atman, go. I'm praying to Holy Mother. He said, no, you're really praying to the Atman. It's like, keep it yourself. He was the kindest, most empathetic person. He would literally give the shirt off his back. He was also a disciple of Mahapurush Maharaj. He said so many of the disciples of Mahapurush Maharaj had the same experience. When they would go to Bellarmont, the first person they would see would be Swami Shivananda Mahapurush Maharaj. And then he would look at them like they were long lost children, long lost friends. That'd be the first person they see. He had the same experience. He bicycled to Bellarmont all the way from Kolkata. It's like, what's a long way. And he saw them, and he just felt this indescribable attraction to him. So he was from East Bengal, and he joined, and he was a great believer in Swamiji, in doing work, service for the poor. So he started this work in the slum area of Calcutta, Paturagata, which was really, really tough work. But because he had such love and such feeling, that it became a huge success. And then they bought this big plot of land out in Narendrapur in the 24 South Parganas area, which is then just kind of basically jungle. It was just the water and the mud was up to their knees, and so they were working just to clear the land so they could have a school. They wanted to have a school there, educate the local boys. And so they were working, and at that point, all he had was a desk. He slept on the desk. He worked at the desk. He had a desk. That was it. Sometimes there wasn't enough. They were running out of money even to have food. And he would go, Mother, do you find me so worthless? And somehow someone would show up from out of nowhere and bring them enough food to be able to get through and enough money to be able to continue out of nowhere. And his whole thing was just surrender. It's like, I've done the work for you. You direct me as you wish. So at one point, he had started the school, and I heard this from the headmaster of the school, who was an elderly man at that point. And in 1987, he was elderly. I'm sure he's long gone. His name was Mr. Bhattacharya, I believe. And he said that I said, it was the school for the blind. I said, how did this work start? He said, I was 19 years old. I had been sighted, and then it was Holi, the day when they all throw paint at one another. And his brother threw paint at him, but unfortunately there was lead in the paint, and he became blind. So he went to Swami Lokesharananda because he wanted to go to the school. He told Swami Lokesharananda, I want to join the school. And he said, yes. And he said, but I am blind. And Swami Lokesharananda, we have a problem. Mr. Bhattacharya said, He didn't say, you have a problem. He said, we have a problem. Not like it's your problem and sorry, Bob, you're out of it. We have a problem. And it became their problem to solve together. So they started the Blind Boys Academy, which is one of the most remarkable institutions I've ever visited. It's still very much in existence today, and as any graduate in Narendra will tell you, those boys run up and down those stairs. I've seen it with my own eyes, back and forth, up and down those stairs. There's no guardrails on those stairs. And they will play just as hard and just as accurately as the kids with sight. In fact, more so because they listen to the sound of the ball. They are amazing. It's the envy of so many people. He started them. He had so much, Lokeshwaranji had so much courage. He wanted to give the blind kids something, a living, so they could make their own living, not begging, but to have a real livelihood to support their families. So he started chicken farming. It's like chickens that to Hindus did not eat chicken. Why? Because chicken was seen as, Swami Sardananda used to call it chicken. So they is seen as Muslim food, sort of impure food. They would eat duck, but not chicken. Don't ask me why. So he started them chicken farming because they could get the eggs and they could continue this way. So all the people in the neighborhood, and the whole, 24 were severely criticizing Swami Lokeshwananda. At that point, he, just to make sure that they knew where he stood, they said, oh, he just wants to eat chicken. He's a monk, but he really wants to enjoy. He became a very strict vegetarian for the entire 20-something years he was at Narendrapur, because he didn't want one breath going against what the work was about, which was to serve humanity, to serve God in humanity in these forms of these people. You always knew with Swami Lokeshwananda, who was pouring out so much love that had nothing to do with you personally. He really could see the divine in everybody, and that he had this incredible love and this joy and this sort of beaming happiness for people high and low. He had friends from the chief minister of the state all the way down to the people who were the sweepers. And he knew all the people, he knew all their families. He made sure all their families were educated. He didn't see any difference. He loved them intently. And you just felt sort of like a cat in front of a fire, with him. It was just felt so warm. Swami Harinamananda, I know you've had some sort of a time with him. Can you contribute anything here?
Uh, um, well, yes, I agree with everything you've said. It was because of you I was able to spend some time with him. Um, he he First of all, one of the things I noticed when I spent the time is that he was a combination, one of the very few swamis who I really felt was a combination of all four yogas.
Yeah.
He 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 was continuously active, and he always writing, never wasting a moment of time. So always writing. He was doing the translating Upanishads, always in motion. Yet he had the biggest heart, as you were talking about. He felt when I went to his the place where he was located in Calcutta, Gold Park Institute of Culture. I noticed that even the workers were all just, when you ask them why they did anything, they said because Boro Maharaj. They were inspired by his life. So he was an inspiration not only to the swamis but to everybody in his presence. And he was so popular. Mother Teresa was one. Swami Lokeshwananda. I forget the other person. There are three people who are three very popular people. And I just remember now, I was actually, he was so popular, yet he was so humble. We went into an airport where we went into, they put us in a sort of a VIP spot when I was traveling with them. And Mother Teresa was in the same spot. And I remember he just, all the attention, all these people, they were coming to him when they saw Mother Teresa, then they went to Mother Teresa. And he just kept himself very low key, very humble. He didn't want the attention. Even when Swami Teshananji would come, one of the incidents I remember was he was this great striking uh, kingly figure in
He
which
was,
we call.
yeah, he kind of walked with such majesty.
He had this gait, this majestic gait,
Yes.
and the way he spoke. He was also universal. I remember, to me, he didn't have an accent. He had a universal language and a universal accent that people just connected with him. Whether you're an airport worker, I saw one African American young woman who was asking, "Who is that person?" because she was just enamored. But what happened was that when he when Swami Bhuteshananji Maharaj came to Gold Park, he had come periodically when after he'd gone to the hospital to rest, and he was lying on his bed in the Gold Park, and Swami Lokeshananda, who is the king of Gold Park, went to see Swami Bhuteshananji in the bedroom, and then this big magnificent king got down on his knees, and then he became a small little child. And Swami Bhuteshananji, who was president of the order, looked towards him, and Swami Bhuteshananji says, "Would you like to use my room? Would you like my room? My room is better. Take my room." And Swami Bhuteshananji turned towards Lokeshananji Maharaj, and like a mother, he started stroking him like a little mother. He said, just
Oh.
stroking his chin. And Lokeshananda the giant was on his knees, and he became a little child. And Bhuteshananda the mother is stroking his chin, and you just see this connection, and there's silence, and tears are flowing throughout Swami Lokeshananji's eyes. So let me ask you a question. What was his nickname for you? Did he have a nickname for you?
Kukumani.
Kukumani. What does that
Kukumani.
mean in English?
A cookie is daughter or child, little girl. Cuckoo is an endearing form of it, and money is jewel. My jewel of a girl.
Ah,
What was his
yes.
nickname for you?
He didn't have a nickname for me, but I because of your connection, I did take advantage of his presence and was able to uh, and be with them for some time. And so yes, he's just he's one of these highly elevated souls that when I met, whatever questions I may have had, it seemed like they, not that they were solved, but being in his presence, you just felt overwhelming love, and the questions
Exactly.
dissolved in his presence.
Yeah. Yeah.
And speaking about love, I wanted to ask you this: was that you talked about what brought you to Vedanta was your first interaction with Swami Prabhavananji, and the experience you said of this love that just overwhelmed you. I wanted to ask you, sometimes we get the question, what is the experience of that love compared to the experience of someone who like falls in love? And when you're in love, like say a young girl or a young boy, when they're in love, all of a sudden they start seeing everything through the colors of the one that they're in love with, and they're feeling love. So what is the difference, if you can tell us,
It's a
about the
really
love
good
that you taste
question.
and the love that we feel when we're in love with someone?
When we're in love with somebody, I'm just remembering what it was like to be a teenager and being totally smitten with somebody. It becomes a very, very personalized thing. It's like, oh, my, that person would like this song, or I wonder what he's wearing right now, or I should get him this, or will he like me wearing this? Or what would he do? Or I want to go here, but will he want to go with me? And then the other thing is like, what if you see him going with somebody else? It's like, it's like, you did what? It becomes extremely, there's a big attachment between Maya and Daya. That Maya is like that personal entrenchment where you get caught up, and then it's very ego involved. With these holy people, there's no ego there. It's just they're the conduit of this divine love. And so you feel this utter purity at the same time. It's like they don't care whether you love them back. They're just there to give love. They don't care whether, you've got money or not. They don't care whether you're popular or not. They don't care what university you're going to. They don't care whether you're going to movies or not. They're just there's no judgment. There's just that pure love. My
So
mother at the end of her 100 years said, "Honey, it's all about the love." it's like, it's like It's like, but she's reading Chundi until she was like 99 and a half. She was reading Chundi every day. So
Wow.
it's that divine love that really, reels us in. We read the philosophy and then we go, check, check. That makes sense to me. That makes sense to me. Because our reason has to be fulfilled. We have to really, it has to make sense to us. But then reason doesn't keep us there because we just get pulled by so many different things. With romantic love, we get hurt. With romantic love, we get jealous. With romantic love, we get like bored. It's like boring. The same stupid joke, the same food preferences, the same thing. It's like that was one thing that made this huge impression on me when one of the lectures I heard from Swami Prabhavananda. He said, divine love is the only love that keeps growing. Human love fades, it can sour, it can go really stale. Divine love is the only love that grows. And I thought, that's what I want. I don't, there's nothing worse than having that kind of sad disappointment, either because of boredom or the people grow apart. I mean, how many people do we know that are madly in love and then they just grow apart and then they just feel like they're living with a stranger that they're somehow indebted to? But they still had this, connection. They might not even like each other very much, but they've got this connection. There's nothing uplifting about it, but divine love lifts you up. It makes you want for more. And in divine love too, it's like that you grow with it. You're nothing is holding you back. There's no competition. There's no sense of I love this person more than you. It's like, no, this love is just universal in its application. And it makes your heart expand instead of like, when we're in love with somebody, it's like being on this mild drug. It's like, oh, it's so wonderful. This is so great. The sky is so blue. The trees are so green. Until he does something. It's like, what do you mean you did that? And then it's like, and then we end up having ego battles.
But
It's
Vrajaprana,
it's
let me ask you. Sometimes, even with the interactions we have with these great souls, I'm sure sometimes you may feel like you've disappointed them.
yeah.
Sometimes you may have done something where you feel like maybe you've angered them or you've hurt them. So, how do you still feel that they love you? How do you still recognize that love, even though you could say on the surface that, at this time, gosh, he scolded me, he's angry at me. How do you know they still love you?
Because it's their nature to love. And when you go back and sometimes they go on a mad and then they recover from the mad. They just blow up. Swami Sheshan used to blow up all the time and then he'd say, you were not allowed to go sightseeing for 10 days. And you go, oh, thank you, God. And then you go, no, 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 no. After 3 days, he said, oh, no, no. Okay, we shall go sightseeing. We shall go sightseeing. It's like they have they want to clear up that egotism that caused the problem in the first place. Swami Rajaprana would never raise his voice. He would never get angry, but he could freeze your soul. And it's just like, oh God, it was just so awful. But then it's like it makes the impression. And then it's like they have to hack away at our ego. Who else is going to do it? They're the only ones who can really see what our deeper problems are. They're removing our obstacles. And if we didn't have them removing our obstacles, we would have our way to spiritual life would be blocked, our way to illumination would be blocked. So we have to know in ourselves, it's like, ouch, that really hurt. Once my guru, Swami Prabhavananda, scolded me up and down in front of maybe 250 people. It was at the end, he was walking down from a lecture. All the people from Hollywood had come up. All the people from Santa Barbara was here. It was like 1968. It was 1968. It was like, starting out flowers in her hair. All the hippies were there. It's like every human being. It was like the happening place. A big crowd coming down. He sees me in the crowd and he goes, Jill, you ever do that? And he was going up and down. And I felt like this little nasty little worm that goes under rocks that you go, ugh. I was so upset that I couldn't eat or sleep for 3 days.
Mm.
So and then they realized that I was having a tough time, and they called me up and they said, Swami was a little hard on you. I said, they said, so they took me out to dinner at Denny's downtown, and they said, don't worry about it. He's just it's for your good. It's for your good, because he was scolding me for something I actually hadn't done in the way that he thought. But I thought, even at the time, I thought, well, that isn't true in this case, but maybe at some point it has been true. So, but he was just like letting me have it.
Yes.
But you couldn't help but be aware of the fact. I mean, it was a huge expenditure of energy on his part for an
Yes.
old man after giving 1 hour lecture, but he was just like cleaning up business, getting out the hacksaw. It was like
Do you
he said,
find that maybe
he scold in person. He said it makes more of an impression that way. It's like, no kidding.
so do you find maybe is it later on as life goes by that you start to see how sometimes we see like a negative experience actually was something of a positive experience? Is that what you're saying that maybe
Absolutely.
they could?
Absolutely. At the time I was so hurt, I was sick to my stomach. I was so hurt, I literally couldn't eat. I could just doze. I couldn't really sleep because he had become like my ideal of what a human, a God realized soul should be. And I thought, if I don't have his grace, I might as well just die. And of course, I was like 15 or 16. So by that point, it's all about the drama. But I just felt like my life was worthless and I was worthless. So thank God I had Prabha Prana and Shuddha Prana and, yeah, maybe Border Prana too. They were like, don't worry, honey, it'll all be okay. And then the funny thing, the next time I saw him, Swami Pavitrananda was here, and I was sweeping the front path. It was probably 2 weeks or a month later. And Swami Pavitrananda said, what is your attitude while you're sweeping the path? And I said, I'm sweeping the path for Holy Mother. And he just smiled. And then as they went on maybe 5 feet, I heard Swami Prabhavananda tell Swami Pavitrananda, oh, she's a good girl. And I was like, oh, he thinks I'm a good girl. That's very nice. Like, oh, God, my life is saved.
Just then, you just mentioned four different swamis. Just can you say what what do you feel was their orientation to the divine? You mentioned, for example, Swami Shraddhananda was a nature mystic, but were they also? Did
He
you
was
feel
also
like
a
look?
jnani. He
So
was a
that's what I'm
real
saying.
jnani.
Were there any bhaktas that you felt among the
Oh,
four
my
that you
guru.
mentioned?
My guru was like, just like Bhakta Premier, even though his Viveka Chudamani classes were the most inspiring things I've ever heard. He was really a Bhakta. And in fact, it was Suji Maharaj, who became vice president of the order, who said, and a disciple of Swami Nirvanananda, who was a disciple of Maharaj himself, and he said, nobody excels Swami Prabhavananda in Guru Bhakti. Nobody. His devotion to his guru and his devotion to Thakur and Mother. Though I love what he said. He said he had a wonderful experience of Mother. And so he used to look at one particular picture of Mother, and just when he would eat dinner, just look at that picture and then look at a picture of Maharaj. And that was this whole thing, just kind of communing with them. And he'd say, Sri Ramakrishna is a tough nut to crack. He said, Holy Mother is easier.
It's interesting because you also mentioned. I think it was uh, who was it you mentioned that said, "Mother is grace and Ramakrishna is the means."
Swami Asheshananda. Thakur
Swami
is the
Seshanand,
method. Thakur is the method. Holy Mother is the grace.
grace, and that's interesting because I've heard it stated the other way sometimes, where in the they talk about Sri Ramakrishna is like the Upanishads. He's all about the mystical experiences. Holy Mother is the in Bhagavad Gita. She's about taking those experiences and how to live them in action. And Swami Vivekananda is the sort of interpreter, the Brahma Sutras, who interprets the experiences and relays them to you. So that's
You know what I
interesting.
find the most interesting in these sadhus is that they all start out probably with one attitude, and then
Yeah.
you see how the whole they sort of fulfill all the attitudes. I mean, Swami Prabhavananda was definitely a bhakta, but you've never heard anyone more speak more clearly or authoritatively on Viveka Vairagya, discrimination. His Viveka Chudamani classes were awesome. Swami Lokeshananda, who was a real karma yogi and a jnani, such love for Thakur, such love. I mean, just like this, to have your all you want for the end of your life into your eternity is to look at Thakur with unbending eyes. To have a jnani say that, and he said that he would at night he would look out at the stars, and he would look at the stars and he'd say, "That which is within them is within me." And I was just when he told me that, I felt like this thrill going through my body. It's like that same infinite reality that illumines the stars is the same infinite reality within my own being. And he kind of lived that, as you know, he just lived that. But all of them start with one attitude. It's like Swami Sheshananda was such a pujari. I mean, he was a real ritualist. But man, nobody loved Shankara more than he did. It's like Shankara and Heisenberg. It was like he loved Shankara. I mean, he always talking about use your buddhi, use your discriminating faculty. He was very much he was when it got down to it, he was a real Advaitin.
What
All
about
these
Swami
people, it's like they
Shraddhananda?
start out in one avenue and then it just kind of expands.
Yeah. What about Swami Shraddhananda? What did he begin? What was he in,
He was
turning into?
he started out with this great jnani with the Upanishads, but he's such love for Thakur. At the end of his life, he was in such pain and he was going to Mahapurush, Thakur. He had such love for Sri Ramakrishna and for his guru, Mahapurush Maharaj. I mean, his whole thing, but he said once he said, I went so high in my meditation. And then I looked down at this old body and I didn't want to go back in there. But his music, he would dance. He would dance in ecstasy. He would just dance and seeing that person and that kind of in singing devotional songs. He wrote beautiful songs to Krishna, beautiful songs to Shiva. I mean, it's like these people start out with one attitude, but they never stay there. It just expands because once you get your foot into that door of the divine, you get the whole room, baby. The whole room opens up. It's just such an inspiration to see that, we start out in one way, but this whole world expands. This whole spiritual world is ours. This is who we are. We are inheritors of that. We are so lucky to be in this tradition where we can have this and to be so close to the source.
So, Rajaprana, can you say maybe what if you had to take like a critical life lesson that you learned from your interaction with them? Can you mention maybe one life lesson that you may mention any of the swamis you've met that you've taken and you've seen that has helped you transform your life? Some lesson that you've learned from any of these souls, something that has maybe.
Oh my God, there's so much.
So just what are some of the life lessons that you've learned?
Grace. I think the more we spend time in spiritual life, the more we look back and we see, oh my God, I can see how there was a real divine intervention there, and what could have gone this way went this way. And that because of that, this opened up. Because of this opened up. How much practice as like I'm nowhere near what I should be, but how much that was like, no, you have to meditate. And that whole thing about call on mother, do your japa. Swami Sheshananda, Swami, of all things, if we were to say anything about Swami Shraddhananda, he was japa siddha. He was perfected in the mantra. I was such an idiot. I mean, I've managed to stay an idiot so much of my life. I was at Bellarmont. I was probably 34, 35 years old or something. I just had my brahmacharya vows or something like that. I was 19. No, I was just about ready to have sannyas. And this sadhu came up to me at Bellarmont in 1987. And he said, he kind of came up to me at the side, and we were with a bunch of, the vice president, Raj, the secretaries of the order, and said, um, "Do you know Swami Shraddhananda?" Swami Shraddhananda. I said, "Oh yes, he's so fun. He likes to tell jokes. He likes to eat luchis." And he looked at me like, "Oh, you stupid woman!" And he literally took me by the arm, pulled me back, and he said, "No, Chapatsinda. He is perfected through the mantra." And I went, "Oh." It's like, huh, I better better spend some time with him and learn from him. It was like, so then I really made a point of spending a week or two with him every year, calling him up, writing to him, asking him questions. And it's like, these souls have such mercy, they have such grace, that if you show the real, if you show any sincerity, and I think if there's one, my primary message to sincerity, sincerity. If any of these souls see some real sincerity, that, don't try to impress them, don't try to show them that you're okay. It's like, just be sincere in what you want and what your search is. They will go 100 billion yards, because that's their nature, because they're so unselfish. That it's like, I kept asking him questions, so I just started spending more time with him. And that was been one of the biggest blessings of my life, is to be able to spend time with him and just learn from him and learn from him and learn from him, and just be in the company of someone who lives in that exalted state. Someone, he said, so that when the mantra was in everything for him. Everything is included in the mantra. All capability, God himself, the infinite divine Brahman, is located in that simple few words that we have, given power by our guru. And that by unfolding that mantra, we can have absolutely everything. So he would hear the mantra in every sound. He would, like, with every movement of his body, with every, even external objects, he'd say, "I must go to the bathroom. Bed, you stay there and you do the mantra while I go off to the bedroom. I go off to the bathroom. Pillow, I cannot keep my head on you now. So you keep up the mantra while I am going to the bathroom." You see, for us, they're inanimate objects. To him, everything was enlivened by consciousness. And by not only consciousness, but the consciousness that they were doing the mantra too. He had the mantra was living in him, living within him. He was one of those perfected in the mantra. So the mantra kept going with his breath, with his heartbeat. He lived in that, and that went through every bit of his consciousness, and he could see it in the consciousness of what we see as walls and matter. He saw as the mantra, the living presence of the mantra in everything. So it's like, to be in the company of a soul like that, oh my God, grace, 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 grace. And he hid himself in a simple little sadhu.
So,
Powerful.
Prajapal, we're almost, time is out here. I'm going to ask you one last question here, and that is that, if you were in a time machine and you can go back and meet your brahmacharini self, say the person before she's joining, just about as she's going to join, what would you tell her? What would you state to her?
Don't worry so much. I was like, oh my God, will I make it? Will I make it? Will I do it? It's like, we don't realize how much grace is available to us. We don't realize how much these great souls, how much Thakur and Mother and Swamiji and Maharaj and Swami Shivananda, all these great souls that have put forth their efforts, are here to help us. All these great souls, it's like they've not gone off somewhere. They're there with us right now, and they're available, and they will help us to just, keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going. And the more we keep going, the more the doors open up, the more joy we find, the more experience we have of this divine reality, and how much like my old girlfriend from high school said to me, she said, well, my husband said he didn't believe in God. And she said, what do you say to that? And he said, it's like saying to me, you don't believe in the air you're breathing. It's like, such a stupid thing. It's like, how can you not believe in the air that you're taking in? Because it becomes the greatest reality of your life. And you know that presence is there all the time. And you
So,
get so much strength from it.
so Rajaprana, then, now that these souls have passed away for some time, do you still talk to them? Do you
Yes.
still feel their presence in your life, and do you feel them? Do you feel their
Yes.
grace helping you on your journey?
Yes. I once told Swami Sardananda, I said, what will happen to me when you go? And he said, I will not go anywhere. I said, but I won't be able to call you collect. And he said, that is true. Because I'd be calling him collect. And he said, I will never leave you. But when he died, I cried for like daily for 4 months. I was so overwhelmed with grief, and that it was pure ego. It's like, oh, he's gone. I can't talk to him. I can't write to him. I can't do anything. It's like, and it was really just ego. It was like, and then once the grief lifted, I felt his presence. It's like I totally felt that joyful presence of his. It had been there all the time, but I'd been blocking it because of this ego identification. It's like, oh, poor me. My Swami has gone. It's like it was just ego. We believe that this thing is so real. And this is as much as we study our Vedanta, we really do think this is the be all and end all. It's like when this is gone, how am I going to talk to them? They're right there. They're right there.
So you just converse.
Hmm.
Anytime difficulty, something like that, you just converse with them.
Yeah, I just say, "Oh, really? What would you have said about that?" Yeah, and yeah, I think about them. I think about what they would say about things. I hear their voice in my head, and I remember what they say. And sometimes long buried memories will just percolate up. Oh yeah, oh yeah. It's such a joy. Holy company, the Sadhu Sangha, is the most valuable thing. It's the gift that keeps on giving because these uh, uh, these memories that we have, this knowledge that we accumulate, we just think we're having like conversations or questions, but we're really gathering fodder. We're gathering food for our hibernation. So we continue to grow and be nourished by the stuff that we've taken in. I'm sure you've had that experience. You were so blessed to have so much association with Swami Swahananji. Such a noble, incredible soul. Talk about humble. An illumined soul that would never let anybody know that he had any spiritual experience. God forbid. He would go way out of his way to hide anything. But to be at the sea with him when he would look out over the ocean and go, Hari Om, Hari Om, Hari Om, my hair would stand up. It was just like, whoa. And one of our monastic brothers, he had a conversation with, and he said something about the highest experience of Brahman. And Swami Swahananda said, yes, he had experienced that by the grace of Swami Premeshanandaji. And he said, and I still can have that whenever I want it. In other words, he said, I can access it whenever I want it. It's like, oh, and you could feel that in him because you would see him. He could be watching the Ramayana like for 12 hours at a time. And you would just sit in the room with him and you just feel your mind race because his mind was such an elevated area, such a high state of consciousness. But he couldn't bear to be around people who wore their religion on their sleeve. So he'd say, I like to watch television. I like to watch Perry Mason. Because he was an extremely humble person. And he's also like, this is what I do. He couldn't stand any sort of hypocrisy. It made him crazy, as you well know. Couldn't stand it. So it was like, but he had this tremendous power that he just kept there. He just kept there. But every once in a while, it just percolate out. So I wish, I'm very sorry that our Gita Prana couldn't be here tonight. She's such a fabulous person. I went to India with her for 3 weeks. It was just memorably fantastic. Just incredible memories of Swami, both those Swami Swananda and Swahananda.
We'll have her on
Great
later on.
souls.
Yeah. So it's
Good,
interesting
good.
because now it sounds like you're making it sound that these extraordinary souls make the mundane spiritual. So even the normal everyday activities, even watching TV, is a spiritual experience when seen through their
Depending on it,
lens.
when they're in the right state of mind, yes. I think for one thing, Swami Swahananda was so incredibly unselfish. So many people wanted to see him, and it was tiring for him. It was like he was getting old.
Right.
So it's like, no, you come, and he could do something where his mind could relax, but he wasn't like having to talk all the time because it was exhausting for him. It was really exhausting. But he never wanted to tell people they couldn't come. So you come and they could just be in his presence. And that would really be enough, because people would feel just their minds lifted, and they could feel like their cares going away. And all the questions they had, it's like just being with him kind of answered all the questions. It's like when you're with a soul like that, it's like,
Yeah.
yeah. What
There was a
question? You're
Santa
the
Barbara
answer.
devotee. I think there was a Santa Barbara devotee that told me he would travel, go all over from Santa Barbara to Hollywood, not to ask any questions, just to sit in the same room as Swami Swahananda. And he described the experience. He said it's like his mind would then have an anchor come down, and the anchor would just go down, 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 further, further into the depths of consciousness. And it was just boundless. It just went down, down. And his mind became so stable, so just
Yeah.
intense, just sitting in his presence. So it's really interesting because you're saying that it's not necessarily that they're communicating through words, not through actions, but just being in their presence.
Presence.
Is enough.
Being in the presence of a holy person like that. I know when he first came, it's like he seemed like the antithesis of Swami Prabhavananda, who was like very like outwardly loving and just like pouring out things and like grace and love of God. And and he was like, you should do this and this and this. And Swami Swahananda said, well, you can either do this or you can do that, or you can do this or you can do that. So it was actually Bimala who asked him the question. She said, Swami, why do you do that? Why don't you say you do this? He said, and she said, why do you keep doing that in your lectures? It just waters them down. And he said, when I give a talk, I'm not talking to the people with zeal. Like anyone who knows Swami Swahananda, he loved that word zeal. I'm not talking to the people with zeal. Those people are fine. They're already on the road for, Tucker are taking care of them. He said, I'm talking to that one person who thinks that they don't have a shot, who they don't have a chance at spiritual life. They think that they are in such a place that they will never have a spiritual life. That is the person I'm trying to reach. You see, as you know, he had such a huge heart. He had such compassion. He had absolutely no patience for normal people who just wasted his time. But he had immense compassion for people who really had a tough road to hoe, a
Suffering.
really tough life, who were really suffering mentally or physically. He had a huge heart for that. Can't you help this person, he would say. Can't you do this much? Infinite patience for people like that. And transform people's lives, transform their lives, that enormous heart of his. It was remarkable to see, because we want to put sadhus in boxes. Like, you're a holy man, you ought to be doing that. You should be watching Perry Mason. Swami Sheshananda said, no God vision with television. And so that to Swami Swahananda, I like to watch Perry Mason. It's like, and what was that? Francis the Talking Mule. He liked Francis the Talking Mule too.
Right. So it's interesting because you see that there's so many varieties of spirituality that are expressed. I mean, like
Exactly.
31 flavors. These are infinite
Right.
flavors, and it's really
Which
interesting
is
to see
good
how
for
different.
us, because
Yes.
none of us are the same either, right?
Right.
So we
Right.
don't.
Absolutely.
What I think what it's important for us to know is, like, we shouldn't try to suppress who we are to try to fit into some preconceived idea about what a spiritual person should be. Once I went to Swami Sheshananda, I said, Swami, I want to be humble. He said, you are humble. I said, I am not humble, which should let anyone know that I'm not humble. He said, no, you are humble. I said, no, I want to be humble like Davy Prana. It's like, no, you be yourself. You be yourself. And that was like, that's a really good lesson for us all. Don't try to fit into someone else's mold. It's perfect for Davy Prana. I can't be that way. I can't. It's not who I am. I'm gonna be feisty and arrogant. I just am. So it's like
Right.
better to be true to who you are
Yes.
than to try to be something else. You know, it's like Krishna says, better to do your own caste duty than do the good duty of another. To be who you are, and then let the Lord work as the Lord and Mother want to work. Because at least we're not being hypocrites. We're not trying to
Right.
put on a false face. We're just being who we are. Then they know what to work with.
Yes, yes, exactly. And I think that sometimes that takes a little bit of time, or sometimes long times, when before we can have sort of the walls of the ego crash, and then we start to accept ourselves as we are, and it's okay. And so that was one of the things also you said, that in the presence of these holy people, you find someone that accepts you as is. And so if they accept you as, then I can accept myself. And then they say,
Exactly.
now it's time to get to work. And so
Yeah.
it really takes some time to get rid of the projection, all this projection that I'm doing,
Yes.
until I
Yeah.
can really accept who I am. And then from that point, now let's begin. So you're truly right when I think you said that really authenticity, genuineness is like, I think one of the primary fundamental factors of spiritual life. So thank you. Vrajaprana, I want to thank you so much for sharing your transparent experiences and just being so easy to talk to. And I, it's just wonderful.
Happy for
Because
me to
then,
talk about all these holy people.
no, it's great because you embody all of us who are fit in different spectrums, and with all our frailties, and it's okay to be who we are. And so I think that's wonderful, and for showing us what spirituality is in these great souls. So thank you so much for this gift. Thank you
Thank you,
for
brother.
all this. One last announcement before we close off here is that the Vedanta Life Academy, we will be having some classes coming up. We're actually going to be starting February 22nd. I believe this Monday you'll be receiving an email, if you're in our email list, of the upcoming classes that will be coming up. So if you're not, just go to the website, Vedanta Academy, VedantaLifeAcademy.com, and you'll see the classes that will be appearing shortly. So with this, we'd like to conclude with the short chant. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Tat Sat Shri Rama Krishna Paramastu. Thank you, Vrajaprana. Thank you. I'm
Thank you, brother.
sorry again that Gita Prana was not available, but
Me
we're
too.
going to try to get her in shortly, hopefully, through Mother's grace. And we hope everybody a wonderful evening, and we'll see you shortly. Thank you, Vrajaprana. Thank you, everyone. And thank you, Subir, for making all this possible.
Thank you,
Jai
Subir.
Ma.
Jai Ma.
Thank you.